School board meeting to order, and before we do, I do have a couple of announcements real quick. So just this notice, this board meeting is being live streamed for the convenience of the public at www.okaloosaschools.com. The public may participate in the public comment portions of the meeting by either personal attendance or by calling the school board meeting public participation phone line. A separate seating area has been set aside for the press and public who are in attendance at the meeting in accordance with social distancing guidelines as provided by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. If calling into the meeting, you should call 850-833-3100. The phone lines will be operational beginning at 6 p.m. on the night of the board meeting, and callers will be transferred into the board meeting during the public comment portion and/or public hearing portion of the meeting only, in the order in which the calls are received. If you are calling into the meeting to make public comment, please be patient as there may be a wait time while being transferred into the meeting. So we'll now move to approval of the agenda and 2.1 changes to the agenda and approval. We do have some changes. Consent agenda added item 8.20, request closure of the Riverside Elementary School Child Care Program, and added item 8.21, supplemental attendance and makeup work policy in the pupil progression plan due to COVID-19, and added item 8.22, emergency exception. I need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Also move.
Dr. Kelly makes the motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Ivanchek, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The motion carries 5-0. I forgot to announce that Dr. White is joining us by phone tonight in accordance to the governor's order on us being able to conduct public meetings via the telephone. And Ms. Ivanchek, Dr. Kelly, Mr. Destin, and myself are present, along with Mr. Chambers, the superintendent. So,
And Mr. Bryant, may I comment just for a moment?
yes, sir, you can.
I just want to say I apologize for not being there tonight. As you know, I was there in person on Thursday, but given my symptoms, I thought it best for me to attend this meeting by phone so as not to worry any of you, my colleagues. So, but thank you, sir.
Thank you, and we hope that you feel better, and hopefully we'll see you Wednesday night.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on through recognitions. We have none. Visitors, we have none. Administrative personnel appointments, we have none. And now we are up to public comment. Before we get started on public comment, I do want to just take a moment to just reflect on this weekend. Board members, as you know, Mr. Chambers, as you know, we have been, we've got quite a few emails regarding an emergency board meeting that we're going to have on Wednesday. I do just want to let the public know that this meeting was called by the board and that the policy that we're going to be discussing on Wednesday was brought before to us from Mr. Chambers, but at the request of the board. So I just want people to know that as board members, it is our job to approve policy. So we felt on Thursday there was a couple that commented that this should be a board decision moving forward. So I did just want to make sure that people know that tonight's meeting is just our regular school board meeting, and that we do have a scheduled emergency meeting so the public can comment on the policy that we're going to be talking about Wednesday night. So just to kind of give everybody a heads up, that doesn't mean you can't call in tonight. It's just letting you know that that particular policy is not on the agenda. It's not for any discussion, or we're not voting on anything tonight. And I believe, Mr. Chambers, you would like to add a few comments too.
I would, and I appreciate that. And I would like to say it's my belief, as well as I know the board's, that the health and the safety of our students and our employees is first and foremost. And I know that we've been discussing masks for a good while at many board meetings leading up to this Thursday's board workshop. So we did create a policy, and this weekend we definitely received a lot of feedback from parents, from employees, and we continue to receive that feedback even close to the start of this meeting. So I think in what we've done so far, said we are going to continue to listen to parents, listen to employees, and I wouldn't say that everyone's on the same page, even still. We're still divided on this topic. But based on feedback, what we did add today is a provision to the policy that was put out. And that provision to the policy is online now. It's redlined, so you can see any change that we made. And what you'll see in there will be an opt-out policy for families, for employees, where this goes against their beliefs. So we absolutely want to be sure, once again, that we do everything that we can do to keep our students and employees safe. But at the same time, there are provisions in this policy. So I just wanted to make that very clear. And on Wednesday, we do hope that those individuals who want to provide input do. And that's why we moved the board meeting to Wednesday, so it wasn't just caught up in this board meeting today amongst 30 different items. We wanted it to be its own individual item where families, where employees can give input. So that's what we've done, and I appreciate you allowing us to do that, Mr. Bryant, and the board. So I just wanted to share that.
All right. So we are now at public comment, and Mr. McInnes, if you would please explain the rules of public comment, and just on tonight, especially with everything that's going on, just remind the etiquette part of it too, please, sir.
Yes, sir. If you're going to make public comment to the board tonight, you'll have 4 minutes to do that, and we would ask that you address your comments to issues and not individuals. And the agenda has been published for tonight's meeting, so it's been out for the public to see what items are for consideration by the board tonight.
Okay. All right. Mr. Mitchell?
Put the first caller through, please. This is the Okaloosa School Board public comment line. Please state your name and full address for the record.
Sure. This is Josh Ashley at 1107 North Bayshore Drive in Valparaiso.
You are live with the board.
All right. Thanks for taking my call. I've called in the past couple of meetings to ask that you take more serious efforts to mitigate the threat of COVID-19 as we all work together to open our schools safely. And I know you're probably used to hearing some long diatribes from me by now, but I actually don't have much to say tonight. I looked over the proposed mask policy that you'll be voting on in a couple of days, and I just want to thank you. It's tailored, reasonable, with clear expectations, exceptions for cases like very young children and kids on IEPs, and there's non-disciplinary consequences for repeated, willful noncompliance. I saw that today an opt-out clause was added to the proposal. I would ask that if there is some kind of opt-out, it really should require the sign-off of a medical doctor, since this is a public health policy and not a disciplinary or religious policy or something about beliefs. This is public health we're talking about. Also, I would ask that there be some kind of clarification on what's going to happen in specifically classroom settings. I understand that the board has ordered many plastic barriers to separate all desks between students. I think we would all hope that these barriers would be sufficient so as to allow masks to come off at some cases where students are seated behind them. But right now, I'm not sure the policy is all that clear on that point. But overall, I think the proposal is great, and I just want to call in and commend you on drafting it. It's very similar to the conditions I've been working under as an employee on Eglin for the past few months. And I got to tell you, on-base transmission at Eglin's been very low, with most cases being contracted within the larger community. I know you've been hearing, you'll probably hear a lot of passionate emails and phone calls over the next few days, but I hope you'll continue to listen to science and medical professionals on this matter. Nothing we do can be perfect, but we owe it to our kids and our families to follow the best available evidence we have to mitigate the risk as much as we can. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Put the next caller through, please. Jan, is there another caller? This is the Okaloosa School Board public comment line. Please state your name and full address for the record. You're live with the board.
Hi, my name is Megan Moxie, and my address is 7774 Boone Trail, Laurel Hill, Florida. And I would just like to comment on the mask wearing for our children whenever they return back to school. And I would ask that you reconsider or actually consider actually giving the parents and children a choice in the matter instead of giving them a non-disciplinary action and having to force them into homeschooling, which is not ideal for a lot of families that have working parents, can't homeschool. We were forced into doing that in the last quarter last year, and it didn't really work out that well for most parents. So I would ask for you guys to reconsider that. I mean, we all deserve to have a choice in the matter and not have that taken away from us. One of my children actually, has ADD and will not be able to focus. She takes medication to be able to focus in school, and she did great last year with it. But now she's got this obstacle put in front of her, having to wear a mask all day is not fair, and it's going to hinder her education. So I also think it's a little bit ridiculous that it's even being brought up a week before school is even supposed to be in session. So I don't think that's really fair after the election. And, Chambers is back in the position, which I'm happy of. I voted for you. Congratulations. But now, a week before school starts, we're having to be brought on this whole decision again. So I would just ask for you to reconsider giving them a choice. If you are afraid to send your child to school, put a mask on them. I'm not afraid. I know it's all a scam. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay.
And I do appreciate the phone call, ma'am, and what you will see on this revised policy is exactly what you're talking about. So you will see an opt-out clause or provision within this policy. We received a lot of input over the weekend, and that adjustment was made. So I just appreciate you phoning in.
All right. Thank you.
There's no more callers.
Okay. Well, that's perfect timing because we're actually need to go into public hearing. So if board members, you would scoot down to section 17. And we do have a 30-second delay, so we will come back if somebody does come on. But let's go down to public hearing, and we'll start with 17.1 and public hearing for adoption of revised school board policy 04-28, emergency operations, school safety and security. Is there anybody from the public here to speak on this particular item? Hearing and seeing none, I need a motion to approve.
I'll move.
Ms. Ivanchek makes a motion to approve. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Dr. Kelly makes a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Ivanchek, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. We're down to 17.2, public hearing for adoption of revised school board policy 04-33, violent crimes, possession or use of tobacco products, alcoholic beverages, drugs, weapons, or firearms. Is there anybody from the public here to speak about this particular item? Hearing and seeing nobody, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Destin makes a motion. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Second, Ms. Ivanchek. Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Ivanchek, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. 17.3, public hearing for adoption of revised school board policy 04-32, discipline. Is there anybody from the public here to speak about this item? Hearing and seeing nobody, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Destin makes a motion. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second.
A second, Dr. Kelly. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Ivanchek, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. We are down to 17.4, public hearing for adoption of revised school board policy 04-49, school threat assessment teams. Is there anybody from the public here to speak on this item? Hearing and seeing nobody, I need a motion to approve.
Also move.
Dr. Kelly makes the motion to approve. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Second, Ms. Ivanchek. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Ivanchek, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. 17.5, public hearing on the school district's 5-year capital outlay plan. Is there anybody here to speak on this item? Hearing and seeing nobody, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Destin makes a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Ms. Ivanchek. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Ivanchek, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. So let's go back up to public comment, and we do have a 30-second delay, so someone did call in while we were doing public comment, so we'll go back up to that.
This is the Okaloosa School Board public comment line. Please state your name and full address for the record. You're live on the school board.
My name is Monica Traxler. My address is 707 32nd Street in Niceville. I was just wondering if after the injunction hearing today was changed, that they did give them their injunction, if there was going to be any consideration of keeping the schools closed until we were at 5% or below positivity rate. I did email Mr. Chambers today and the school board. I am keeping my child home. She's 6 years old. I have decided to keep her home. But I was just, I wish that our teachers were not put in the position to have to go back. And also wish that they were able to
Do you want to say?
just be safe. And I think I'm just afraid that with school going back, that our community will have a new outbreak. We are at, I think, 8% now, and I just feel that is there any accommodation going to be made, or are you guys going to even discuss the possibility of keeping schools closed till it's 5% or less? Thank you.
I mean,
So-
honestly, I mean, we're just hearing about it today, so I don't think we're in a position to really.
4:15 today we
Right.
got the message.
Correct, and that's kind of what I was going to say as
Right.
well. So this kind of came out late today, so I know that we'll look at that and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Any more callers?
Okay. So, all right, we'll move on down. Section 7 was workshop only. We'll now move to consent agenda. 8.1, I need approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Ms. Ivanchek makes a motion to approve. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Dr. Kelly makes a second. Is there any discussion regarding the consent agenda? Hearing none. Ms. Ivanchek, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. So let's go all the way down to Section 9, Superintendent's Human Resource Recommendations. The first two are informational only, so we'll go to 9.3, and cleared certification requirements and issuance of contracts for the 2020-2021 school year. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Destin makes the motion. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Ms. Ivanchek makes the second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Evancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. 9.4, out-of-field report for the 2020-2021 school year. I need a motion to approve, please.
I'll move.
Dr. Kelly makes the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Ms. Evancheck. Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Evancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. 9.5, department restructure. I need a motion to approve.
I move.
Ms. Evancheck makes the motion. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Dr. Kelly seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Evancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. 9.6, employment separations. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Destin makes a motion. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Second by Dr. Kelly. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Evancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. 9.7, personnel recommendations. I need a motion to approve.
Move we approve.
Mr. Destin makes the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second, Ms. Evancheck. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Evancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, and the motion carries 5-0. 9.8, employee transfers. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Destin makes the motion. I need a second, please.
I'll second.
Dr. Kelly makes a second. Any discussion?
I would like to make just one quick comment.
Okay.
I see Patrick Strong in the audience, and I just wanted to thank him for all the different modalities he's served as in this district, and I understand that, forgive me if I misstate this, Lee, I know you'll help me out here. He has requested a transfer to the union office for a year, and so we congratulate him and wish him well in that spot.
Okay.
That-
All right.
Thank you, Patrick.
All right. Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Evancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. 9.9, instructional evaluation system for 2020-2021 school year. I need a motion to approve.
I'll move.
Excuse me. Thank you, Ms. Evancheck. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A second by Dr. Kelly. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Evancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. 9.10, reinstatement reimbursement of sick leave due to line of duty illness, injury, medical examination. I need a motion to approve.
Move we approve.
Mr. Destin makes the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Dr. Kelly makes a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Evancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. 9.11, leave without pay. I need a motion to approve.
I'll move it.
Ms. Evancheck makes the motion. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Dr. Kelly makes a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Evancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. So 10 is discussion agenda. We did not have any items moved from the agenda for discussion, so now we're down to 11, construction program owners representatives business. Say that. And 11.1, program status, Mr. Destin.
Thank you, Chairman. As I reported at the workshop, we are making steady progress on all the projects that were on the agenda at the last meeting. And we have 2 items to go yet here
Okay.
on the agenda.
All right. So that is true. We're going to be voting on the next 2 items. So 11.2, authorization for professional services agreement from Faithful and Gould for price validation for program number 6, task order number 8, Kenwood Elementary School kitchen dining roof replacement scope modification, owner directed change order. I need a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Mr. Destin makes the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Ms. Savancheck. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Savancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The motion carries 5-0. So we're at 11.3, district proposed half-cent sales tax capital project plan. And I need a motion to approve?
Are we going to have a presentation? Or?
Also move.
Well, do we need to make the motion and then, isn't that correct? We make the motion and then he can
Open it
come,
up for discussion.
Yeah.
right, after I make the motion and second, right, okay. So who made the motion?
I did.
Okay, Dr. Kelly? And I need a second, please.
I'll second it.
And Ms. Savancheck makes a second. Any discussion?
And that is to open the issue up for Mr. Horton to make his presentation,
Yes,
correct?
correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. What I wanted to do this evening, just briefly with you, is I want to provide some context and confirmation in a couple of areas. So when we met on Thursday, we talked about capital project, sales surtax project list for each school in the district. And as we said on Thursday, that is one pillar of the capital plan for the district for the next 10+ years. And so what I wanted to do was pull up some of the slides that we shared back in March and revisit them to get a confirmation and some context for what brought us to where we were or where we are at this point in time, if you'll give me just a moment. So these are some of the items that we talked about in the spring and March before we were interrupted by COVID. And so just to briefly share those again, in terms of our demographics as a school district, about 32,000 enrolled students, the number of schools we have, and now we did have 3 operating charter schools, and a 4th was scheduled to open this fall, but again, as pushed off until next year. That is the plan, and that would be the charter high school in Destin. Mr. Chambers and the board members have noted for the last several years the aging nature of our facilities, and so I don't want to go into great detail on those. 3/4 of them are at least 45 years old. We've had 2 schools built this century, and of course the number of portables that are in our district. I think at one point in time, about 20 years ago, we were able to work our way out of portables, and we're now back to the situation where we have a large number of them again. It's going to be it would be an ongoing challenge in counties that grow to always remove portables in all levels from the building, but that's something that was a focus here. And so in this situation, the other thing that I brought to bear was just some context for our school district in Okaloosa, and that is this particular bar chart identifies a couple of things. It identifies 1.5 mil funding for districts that are similar in size to us. So you'll notice that Alachua is about 27,000 students. Leon's a little bit bigger than us. And so the 2 mil money, or the 1.5 mil money for property taxes, is similar among those first 3. Sarasota is a district, higher property values there, not that many more students. I think they're around 40,000. So they bring in about $95 million a year. So this is nothing more than context for the board and the public about what other school districts, possibly of similar size, are doing with regard to their capital program. And so what you'll see in the case of Alachua and Leon County and Sarasota, each have a half-cent sales surtax. And so that orange bar above would indicate the additional funding for capital needs that each of those districts has availed themselves of over the past through voter-approved referendum. And so at that level then, you'll also see in certain places voters have approved impact fees, which would be separate from the half-cent referendum that this will be on the ballot in November. But it gives you a sense of the funding that's available for schools and school construction and school capital needs across other districts in the state of Florida that are relatively close in size to us. And so the point of this particular slide was just to share with our own citizens and certainly the board and the folks watching the board meetings that Okaloosa, through no fault of its own, doesn't receive the same level of funding for capital needs that other districts have. Okay. Now, what happened in our school district back, actually back last fall, we begun a process to develop a capital plan for the district, capital needs, both on the repair, replacement standpoint, from the standpoint, but also where it made sense to have new construction. And so that process involved, if you recall, establishing some goals for the district and taking a look at our existing conditions and exploring options that we could take to a path for the next 10 to 15 to 20 years for the school district. And then develop an implementation strategy. And so we've been following this process based on goals of the school district, and our operations department specifically went out to address the academic needs of schools from a facility standpoint, to improve and renovate condition of schools, both building and site work, in order to lower recurring maintenance costs and improve functionality for staff, students, and parents, to ensure the safety and security of our students through establishment of single points of entry and perimeter fencing, to provide improved technology infrastructure in order to maximize web-based student learning opportunities. And goodness, we've seen unexpectedly this past year how important it is to have robust infrastructure in support of students. To refresh the district's bus fleet, which has been documented as one of the oldest in the state of Florida, and to address enrollment growth, either through the thoughtful expansion of existing facilities or new construction. And so that's what we set out to do. And as a result of those guidelines, we ended up meeting in January with each school, each principal, school advisory council chair, our facilities and maintenance folks, our contract partner, Jacobs Titan, technology folks, to look at the needs in the school. And so what we developed over the past several months was not necessarily just a want list, but it did absolutely have input from the principal and those parties involved, but it was also a needs list and a prioritized needs list. And so what happens then is that we understood that all of these needs could not necessarily be addressed, certainly within the existing capital budget of the school district. We looked at the academic mission of each school and how we could best address that. So it could mean a school that was working towards a career technical program in construction and needed some adjustments to their existing space to make that happen. It could be the academic mission is hindered by the fact that students and teachers are eating lunch all day because the cafeteria area is so small that they can't adequately address those needs. It may have been built for 400, but there may be 600 or 800 students in the school at this time. We looked at the overall health of the buildings on campus. Do they heat, cool, feed, and maintain a safe environment for learning? The site condition itself, are there areas where the enrollment of the school has outgrown the ability of the school to support it, whether it be parking, drop-off and pickup, media center space, cafeteria space, as I mentioned before, anything that could negatively impact the academic environment. And then a critical piece to this is growth, and looking at growth patterns since 2010 following that recession. And we've seen growth in certain areas of the county, consistent growth in certain areas of the county from that point forward.
Excuse me, Mr.
Yes,
Horton. Mr. Mitchell, is Dr. White online right now?
I'm here, Mr. Bryant.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Mr. Horton.
And then looked at all of these items in a prioritization level with regard to safety and security, what the learning environment looked like, and what growth looked like. The discussion that we had back in March and that we'll bring back to bear tonight is construction versus expanding campuses. And so it is very important as we look at this and consider how to address growth in certain areas of the county, that in some cases where growth is flat, it might make sense to do something with classroom additions. In other places where growth is continuous and there's ample land and opportunity for more housing, then it makes sense to look at new construction. And so we spoke about that a little bit on Thursday. Mr. Destin brought that up. We want to talk about that today and make sure everybody understands that the project list that we're looking at right now for the sales surge tax are more or less, they are critical needs within the schools. They need to be addressed. The growth piece also needs to be addressed. And I think the value of both of those together in tandem is what will help set Okaloosa County Schools apart in the coming years. I think that it's important to recognize that we can't do it all in terms of all the capital needs in the school district without the help of a surtax and moving forward. And Mr. Destin, you may have had a comment to make at that point.
Oh, absolutely. And we talked at the workshop that these two programs are joined at the hip, and they are. Without the half cent, we cannot go forward with the expansions that are necessary to set us on the correct path for the next 10 to 20 years. The surtax is going to enable us to take funds that we have available. We have up what we would call a bond issue in the municipal world, but which is, I guess, participation funds that's going to be paid off shortly, which will give us a substantial amount of money in the next couple of years that we can go to use toward addressing the needs for the next 10 to 20 years. And we have some other revenues too. As we were looking, I think we came up with about $500 million worth of needs to cover both these critical repairs, I call them, to the schools, plus the expansion that we need for the next 20 years. And our half sales tax is going to generate about half of that, we estimate. So you can't do the two without the sales tax, and it's very important for us all to understand that we may be able to fix the schools where they don't fall down around our heads, but that would leave us with no money to plan for the future and to plan for growth. So these two concepts are really tied at the hip and have to go together, or we will be in very sad shape to where we can't expand and do the things we need to for the future. So I would love to see us sometime between now and the November election to flesh out a little more about what the new recommendations are, because I know we have some that look like they would be in the north end, something in the central area, and something in the south end. And I think they are projects that we all understand that we need to go forward with in order to plan for the future. And so, but tonight our issue is to go forward with the half cent. And I hate to repeat myself, but without the half cent, the other things can't happen.
Yes, sir. And I'll just echo what Mr. Destin is saying. This slide that you've seen before does highlight growth in certain areas of the county. It highlights estimates of classroom space needed over the next 10 years. And so that bottom bullet there indicates potential for 370 classrooms needed over the next 10 years, given projected growth. Now, we all know that we're in an environment of COVID right now, and so it is absolutely appropriate to make sure we're looking at and measuring what the impact is. When this pandemic ends, and we have a number of folks who have moved to online learning, we expect that there are going to be some that choose to stay there. And that would just be the nature of the business and part of what we have to do and evaluate. So when we do our studies about this and the growth and the projected of classroom needs, we know there are things that are going to come up that cause those to necessarily be adjusted or looked at a second time and a third time. One of the things that Mr. Destin was speaking to is, where growth is occurring, where capacity has been exceeded, and what needs exist in our district right now. And so part of the capital plan contemplates construction in these areas of the county. And so you'll see in the north end, there is a need going forward for potentially a K-8 school in that area. There is a need in the central zone for an elementary. There is a need in Destin for a K-2 addition, as opposed to trying to build another school. But if, again, I mentioned on Thursday, Destin Elementary is one of our schools whose growth has continued. They're a K-4 now at close to 1,000 students, which makes them the largest elementary school in the district, even without a 5th grade. And so Dr. Kelly's aware, when she was the principal at Destin Middle, or round about that time, when 5th graders came over there. And so now we've got a school at Destin Middle that is about as big as it's ever been, close to 800 students, and not built for 800. So these are places where we believe that new construction, and it's not to say it's all next year. I mean, that's planned out, and so it occurs over time to make that happen. In the south end of the county, where growth is not significant, it's more appropriate in places to potentially build some classrooms as opposed to a complete new school. And so these pieces here are part of our work with Jacobs Titan on an overall approach to capital needs for the next 10 to 15 years. They go together. And so you could look at it as, those items that need work now that can be supported through a 1/2-cent surtax, and also those items that help us grow into the future in terms of new construction. So I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that the capital plan contains both of those. Jacobs Titan has all that documentation and proposal, and I'm giving it to you in short order form here because Mr. Destin's correct. The item this afternoon or this evening is the sales surtax project list that we want to make sure we get the board's approval of to move forward with.
And Mr. Horton, and when you talk about in the south end where enrollment might be flat, but we're talking about potentially adding some wings, kind of explain why we would add wings when enrollment might be flat.
Well, if right now there are existing several portables in those facilities, in those locations, some of the schools, even with the enrollment, were not built to support the number of students there. So you may have a location where there are several portables that are used for students, and the enrollment, if it's flat or holding, then we'd want to make sure over time that we provide those students with an environment outside of a portable for their classes.
And that was indeed the focus of the last 1/2 cent, if you all recall, was to try to get people out of portables. So that will be an element of this also.
And I do think, yes, sir. Now, that brings us to where we are now. And so the management of the project, how and where funding is made available to determine the order at which things are done and the pace with which things are done. If the 1/2-cent surtax is approved, and the district can also make use of some of its 2 mil money to help support the growth, then you've got two potential sources of funding. One cannot accomplish the task without the other. And I think that's the statement that Mr. Destin keeps driving home, is that with our current 2 mil money, I mean, we all can see the Alachua example, the Leon County example, the Sarasota example. With our own 2 mil money, although it seems significant, and it is a good bit of money, it's not enough to continue to work on the buildings that we have, the portables that we have, expanding the cafetorium, and also addressing new growth. And the district went down this path 10 or so years ago when it built Shoal River and Riverside. It made use of its own 2 mil money and borrowed against it to construct those. And all the while, we were still struggling to make sure we kept up some of the oldest facilities in the state.
Any other discussion, board members? I'll start with Ms. Evanchik.
No, I just think that the public needs to understand, certainly no one likes the tax word, but this is the fairest tax that can be out there with the sales tax, and I don't see how anyone could not understand the need of what we have here. And if this gets put farther down, I can't imagine, I mean, I don't know what you go past critical, but I hope that everyone will see the, the need of it and everything. I think I mentioned this in the workshop, I know I did. If people will look back at the history, and I know some people, we've been around here, a lot of building and growth happened in the mid-'60s to mid-'70s, and bottom line, these facilities are coming of age where they need those upgrades. But I agree that in the meantime, we do need to look at growth and look to the future. And what you're saying about those areas, I think the statistics, show that we're going to have to look at some building to grow in that way for the future, and also to fix things. So I hope that the public is paying attention to what we're trying to do, and we'll vote this in come November. Thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
Well, I'll just say, I remember the days when other school boards in Okaloosa County and across the state had ample, what we call PICO funds, public education capital outlay funds, and they were ample to keep our construction up with growth and with repair. But over the years that I've been here, PICO funding has shrunken to almost non-existent. While we do get some funding, it isn't enough even really to sustain one building, in my humble estimation. So I think the public doesn't necessarily know that. We don't talk in those terms often enough. But along with that, I'd just like to say we have the best instructional leaders and the best instructors, the best teachers in the state of Florida. And we have the best achieving students in the state of Florida. And I just think that all of those factions, all of our stakeholders, deserve better facilities to live and work in. And that's all.
Thank you. Dr. White, any comments?
Well, yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Just to say that I certainly support the list as provided, and when you're ready, I'm ready to vote for it.
Okay. All right. And my comment is, like I've said over the last 4 years, that this particular half-cent initiative is an investment in our future, and that's how we need to look at it. It's an investment. And I really hope the voters of Okaloosa County will look at it as that, so we can invest in our future. All right, so no other discussion. We already have a motion and a second. And Ms. Ivanchek, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Horton. Okay, so now we're down to information technology seat management contract, and we do have some items to vote on tonight. So we are at 12.1, task order number 2-161, online learning preparation. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Destin makes a motion. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Dr. Kelly makes a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Ivanchek, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The motion carries 5-0. 12.2, task order number 2-162, Okaloosa County School District outdoor WAP installation. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Destin makes a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second, Ms. Ivanchek. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Ivanchek, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The motion carries 5-0. 12.3, task order number 2-167, Northwest Florida Ballet AI phone project. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Mr. Destin makes a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Dr. Kelly makes a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Ivanchek, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The motion carries 5-0. 12.4, task order number 2-168, Bob Sykes portable project. I need a motion to approve.
Also move.
Dr. Kelly makes the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second, Ms. Ivanchek. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Ivanchek, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote? And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. 12.5, change order 16 to the IT seat management outsourcing agreement, contract modification agreement, Chromebook seat and support pricing. I need a motion to approve.
Move we approve.
Mr. Destin makes a motion. Do I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Second, Ms. Vancheck. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Vancheck, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. Kelly, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Destin, how do you vote?
Yes.
Dr. White, how do you vote?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the motion carries 5-0. So we are now to section 13, attorney's business. Mr. McGinnis.
No report this evening.
Okay, thank you, sir. Now we are to section 14, superintendent's business. Mr. Chambers.
Thank you, and I just want to take this opportunity just to reemphasize, as we all know, we're getting ready to start the school year, and teachers came back last week, but also this week is part of the first full week where teachers are going through different trainings. Schools are reiterating their processes, so this is a really busy time in the school district. But we all know that COVID-19 right now has dominated everything that we do. But it can't dominate everything because there's still other business that has to occur. So when you start looking at, from transportation to food services to maintenance and facilities to finance to curriculum to MIS, all of these functions still have to occur, all while dealing with the impact of COVID-19. And the work that has been done, I think at the district level with these folks, I just couldn't be prouder of. Then you look at what's happening at the school levels, and we've talked about this, what our administrators, our 12-month staff, front office staff, guidance counselors have done over the course of the summer. Once again, not only preparing for COVID, but just preparing for the start of a school year. And all of you know, just the start of a school year is already a task in it of itself, but then throw COVID on it, it's a whole nother level. And now you have teachers and other staff that are reporting to work right now, where normally, they're looking at getting their room set up, getting their lessons ready, who might be a sub, for a particular person. But now they're learning new things, they're reemphasizing new things, and their classrooms, the way that they do business, has all changed. So just once again, I couldn't be prouder of the employees of the school district, the way that they've handled this new normal, like we like to say. They've handled it without complaining. They've provided input, and we appreciate that. And then lastly, just to our parents and students, just once again, unprecedented times for them. I know that there's angst, there's anxiety, there's excitement, all mixed into one. And just once again, just couldn't appreciate them more as well as they've gone through this process. So that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. And now we'll move down to board members' announcements and requests for information, and I'll start with the Honorable Mr. Destin.
Thank you, Chairman, but I don't have anything further tonight.
Okay. And Dr. White?
Nothing tonight, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. And Dr. Kelly?
Oh, I'll just say that I was in 2 of our schools today, and everything looked great. The teachers were excited. The buildings looked great. So kudos to everybody for great preparations there. And I'll just say one thing, and he may not appreciate this, but it was awesome to be at Eglin Elementary and to witness the first day with Dennis Samak. And as most of you know, I had the pleasure of working with him as my AP at one of my schools, and it's just phenomenal when you can have a work relationship where you get the job done, but it's fun too. So congratulations on your first day, Mr. Samak, and of course I always enjoy being at PLU. They too had a wonderful faculty meeting and kickoff to the new year.
Ms. Vancheck?
Well, I was fortunate enough to be in 2 schools today too. I started with breakfast in Baker. It's a pretty good hike to do that, but Mr. Martello and his staff always make it worthwhile to make that voyage up to Baker. And what I heard from those teachers is, let's do this. Let's go. I want to see my students. We've got this. Then for lunch, so I was well fed today. For lunch, I got to go to the farthest west of our district to Florosa Elementary. Always a treat out there with Miss Massey and her crew. Same thing, just excited, ready to do things. So I think that, I told them they're back in their element, and you can tell they're very excited. One other thing I want to mention that's coming up this week in the world, this Wednesday will be the 100th anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment, that women won the right to vote. And that's, I think, a very big deal that we should be looking at. I know this last, in the primary election, there were several women candidates. As a matter of fact, this board will be adding a female come November. And I just think that we need to make sure that our young women are aware of what these women in history. We actually had a group of women here in Okaloosa County at that time who fought for women to get the right to vote. So I think it's an important thing in our country's history, and that's coming up this Wednesday.
Awesome.
All right, thank you.
And I would just like to comment that I too was at Shoal River Middle School this morning, and I agree with my colleagues here that the excitement, just everybody's ready to get back to having the kids in the school, and a great breakfast. Had, eggs and grits and all that good stuff. But the teachers, the staff, everybody's excited to get back to school. And I'd also like to comment that our future principals, we have a lot of great assistant principals out there. And on Friday, I stopped by Shalimar Elementary and saw our principal, Miss McSparron, but I also had the opportunity, because Miss McSparron was on a meeting, to walk around the school with Miss Armstrong. And for those of you that don't know Miss Armstrong, she is such a passionate person, and she's going to go very far with the school district. One day she'll be a principal, but we had a great time walking, looking at the classroom, seeing how they're preparing for the beginning of school, and got to talk to some teachers and got some great feedback from all angles. So, but I wanted to comment, Mr. Chambers, that Miss Armstrong is definitely one of our rising stars, and just compliment her being able to walk around the school with her. So, all right. So,
Can I say one more thing, please, sir?
Sure.
Yeah. One thing I want to say on an up note, too, is one of the advantages of this, what I told the faculties this morning, the longest spring break in history, is I saw a lot of wonderful new floors and nice painting and a lot of things that I know that they're always rushed to get done in the summer, especially with the summer programs and just trying to do all that. So if there's a silver lining, that's one of them, that I think our facilities look spick and span and very nice. And I'm sure that Mr. Destin would appreciate that too, that I saw a lot of really nice things out there today. And so that's been one good thing, having this time to get it done.
yeah. Schools are definitely shining bright.
Yeah,
that's
they
for
look
sure.
good.
All right, so now we are down to the second phase of public comment. And Mr. McInnes, would you please explain this portion of public comment?
Yes, sir. In this phase of the agenda, a person's making public comment will have 2 minutes to make their comments to the board.
Okay. Mr. Mitchell, do we have anybody on the phone? Okay, is there anybody in the public that would like to speak? Okay, hearing none. Mr. Horton, do you have anything? Ms. Lightbourne? Ms. Scallon? Dr. Hale? And it's great to see our friends from the association here tonight. And Ms. Appleberg, I believe you would like to come to the front. And Mr. Strong, it's good to see you too, sir.
It is definitely great to be back. Teachers are all excited. I just wanted to come out and say I know that we've been watching these board meetings online live to help out with trying to keep the space inside this boardroom, but it is good to be back in the boardrooms itself and to see everybody in here. I know that multiple times Mr. Chambers and his staff have mentioned the working relationship that we have had when it comes to these reopening plans, and it has not been easy to make some of the decisions that we've made. But I do want to say publicly, thank you, Mr. Chambers, and all of your staff for being able to work with us and including us. We truly believe that the only way for us to have gotten through all of this is for us to have worked together in the way that we did. It's not always easy, but I believe that we did it the best way that we could, and I hope others can agree with that as well. And then I also wanted to say, I know that some of you have contacted me trying to find out what OCEA's position is on the mask mandate. And I wanted to go ahead and go on record today to say that our membership has been polled and surveyed multiple times on this issue. They've been surveyed by us, they've been surveyed by the district, and most recently by principals. And so with that survey, we've always come up split. The highest percentage difference that we've had in all of our surveys was 60-40. And that was the very first survey we did back in, May? And ever since then, it's been about 50-50 every time, pro and against. So because of that, OCEA's official stance on this is that we are not going to take a stance on this, because I cannot represent my members and the way that they need to be represented with them completely split. I need to, my personal opinion has not been put out there on this because I know that I speak for my members, and therefore I cannot come out and give any type of stance for this, because our members deserve to have their voices heard on Wednesday night if they choose to call in or to email you with their own personal standing, since we are so split on this.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Jordan, real quick before you run off, I can, I might be able to speak for the board, but we do truly appreciate the team effort that has gone out there. And if you look across the country,
We are very lucky.
We are, well, I won't say lucky. We just are fortunate that we have that great of a relationship and that we are working together to do what's in the best interest of all of our students and teachers.
I completely agree. When the governor had made all of his statements back in whenever it was that he did, I can say one of the first phone calls I had received was from Mr. Chambers. And during that phone call, we both spoke and we agreed that the only way to get through this is going to be together.
Right.
And so have we seen eye to eye on everything? No, but we've been able to talk about it and to come up to a solution that would work for both sides of
Right.
this. And currently, our membership is trying to ratify our contract. I have worked very closely with Dr. Hale on working on an MOU for this pandemic, and that is currently up for our members as well. Normally, we don't ratify MOUs, but this time, because it's such a big difference in what working conditions will be, we felt like our members needed to have a voice because they had been split on so much. So we'll see how that goes. Our ratification ends tomorrow.
Yep. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Appleberg. Mr. Strong, anything? You're good? Okay, this meeting's adjourned.